Delia's creatinine came back at 1.6 milligrams per deciliter. The office called it borderline. Nobody asked what she'd eaten. 2 nights earlier, she'd had a slow-cooked pot roast, and every morning that month, she'd stirred her grandson's creatine powder into her coffee because he said it was good for aging muscle. Same kidneys, different number, and in the chair beside her sat a woman with a perfectly normal creatinine who was losing kidney function faster than she was. Delia Braithwaite is 71. Retired after 31 years carrying a mail route in Spokane, Washington. She spent 11 weeks convinced she was headed for dialysis. She wasn't. Figuring that out took one extra blood test nobody had ordered. I've worked emergency medicine a long time, and kidney numbers are the ones I see misread more than any other. Blood pressure people understand. Creatinine confuses everyone. So before I give you a single food, I have to take something away from you. The belief that creatinine is a kidney score. It isn't. Creatinine is muscle garbage. Here's the biology in plain English. Your muscles run on a fuel storage molecule called creatine. Every day, a small, predictable fraction of it breaks down into creatinine, and your kidneys filter that out into your urine. So the amount in your blood depends on 2 separate things: how much your muscles produce and how well your kidneys clear it. Think of a bathtub. The water level tells you nothing on its own. It depends on how fast the faucet runs and how open the drain is. A big man who lifts weights and eats meat has the faucet wide open, and his creatinine can read high with healthy kidneys. A frail 82-year-old woman who has lost most of her muscle has a faucet barely dripping. Her creatinine can sit at a beautiful 0.8, while her drain is half plugged. That's the woman in the next chair. Normal number. Failing kidneys. 3 things push creatinine up that have nothing to do with kidney damage. Write them down. Cooked red meat when you cook muscle, some of the creatine in it converts straight to creatinine, and you absorb it, which can nudge a blood level up for hours. Creatine supplements, sold hard to seniors now for aging muscle, do the same thing more consistently. And dehydration, which concentrates everything in your blood, is the one I see in the emergency department all summer. The fix costs nothing. Before a kidney blood draw, skip red meat the night before, pause creatine powder for a few days, drink normally, then ask for the 2 numbers that mean something. The first is eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate. It takes your creatinine and adjusts for age and sex to estimate how much blood your kidneys actually filter per minute. That's the drain, not the water level. Below 60, sustained 3 months, is how chronic kidney disease gets defined. The second is the one almost nobody gets offered, and it's what rescued Delia. Cystatin C, a different waste protein, and your muscles don't control it. Bodybuilders and frail widows produce it at roughly the same rate. So, when the 2 disagree, cystatin C is usually telling the truth. The National Kidney Foundation supports using it to confirm kidney function when the creatinine estimate doesn't match the patient in front of you. Delia's cystatin C showed an eGFR of 73, mildly reduced, not dialysis, not close. 11 weeks of fear, resolved by 1 tube of blood. Once you know where you actually stand, food stops being panic and starts being leverage. The Centers for Disease Control estimates about 35.5 million American adults have chronic kidney disease, and roughly 9 out of 10 don't know it. That's the population of California walking around with a quiet problem. So here are 6 plant foods, ranked backwards, starting with the one that helps least, finishing with the one that changes the most. And with number 2, there's a preparation rule that decides whether that food helps your kidneys or lands you in my emergency department. Number 6 is red bell peppers, last on purpose, because their power isn't in what they add, it's in what they replace. Hold this question while I explain. Why would a doctor ever tell a kidney patient to eat less of a vegetable? Because when filtering slows, potassium starts backing up in the blood. And potassium sets the electrical rhythm of your heart. Too much, and the heartbeat gets sluggish, then irregular, then stops. That's not a scare line. That is how people die from advanced kidney disease. So, a lot of the standard healthy plate turns into a problem. Baked potato, tomato sauce, orange juice, banana, fine in early kidney disease, not free later. Red bell peppers are the swap. A medium one carries around 211 milligrams of potassium, low for produce, while delivering more vitamin C than an orange plus carotenoids that fight oxidative damage inside kidney tissue. Roast a tray, blend them with garlic, and put that over pasta instead of marinara. Done twice a week, that quietly removes a few hundred milligrams of potassium without removing a nutrient you needed. Small move, real move. The next one does something peppers can't. Number 5 is cabbage. And cabbage earns its spot for a reason that has nothing to do with vitamins. Cabbage is very low in potassium, low in phosphorus, and absurdly cheap. A head costs less than a cup of coffee and feeds you 4 days. That matters. I've had this conversation in the emergency department more times than I can count, where the renal diet fell apart not from disbelief but from cost. The mechanism is worth knowing. Cabbage, cauliflower, and kale carry sulfur compounds that support the liver's detoxification pathways. Your liver and your kidneys work the same shift. When the liver clears more of the load, fewer waste compounds ever reach the kidney's filters. It's like someone sorting the mail before it hits your desk. Your desk doesn't get faster, your desk gets less. Shred half a head raw with vinegar and olive oil, keep it in the refrigerator, make it your default side dish. Not glamorous. Extremely repeatable. Repeatable is the only thing that moves lab values. Now, number 4 is where the numbers start getting interesting because this one has been measured directly against waste products in the blood. Number 4 is barley. Pearled barley, the bag in the rice aisle for about $2. I promised plant foods and handed you a grain stay with me because the reason barley works is the reason the top 2 foods work. Barley is loaded with a soluble fiber called beta-glucan. It isn't digested. It turns into a gel, travels to your large intestine, and feeds the bacteria living there. Those bacteria then grab nitrogen waste, including urea that has diffused out of your blood into the gut, and build it into their own cell walls. That nitrogen leaves in stool instead of going through your kidneys. That's the part almost nobody explains. A high-fiber diet builds a second exit for nitrogen waste. Your kidneys are no longer the only door. Think of your kidneys as a furnace filter. You can buy a better filter, or you can burn cleaner fuel and send less soot at it. Fiber is cleaner fuel. Research from the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases has repeatedly found that higher fiber intake in people with chronic kidney disease tracks with lower inflammatory markers and lower blood urea, nitrogen. And here's the gap. The average American adult eats about 16 grams of fiber a day against a recommended 25 to 31. Your kidneys absorb the cost of that difference. Swap barley for white rice 3 dinners a week. Cook a cup, keep it in the fridge, spoon it into soup. That's the whole intervention. Which brings us to the beans, where this gets genuinely powerful and where it gets dangerous if you do it wrong. Number 3 is lentils and mung beans, and they rank above barley because of phosphorus, specifically the kind you don't absorb. Phosphorus gets ignored in every kidney conversation. When kidneys can't clear it, the body pulls calcium out of bone to balance it, and that calcium ends up deposited in blood vessel walls. That's why advanced kidney disease and heart disease travel together. It's the same mineral at the wrong address. Here's what changes how you shop. Plant phosphorus and animal phosphorus are not the same substance in your body. In beans and lentils, most of it is locked inside a storage compound called phytate, and humans barely make the enzyme that unlocks it, so you absorb roughly 40 to 50%. Animal phosphorus from meat and dairy runs closer to 70. And phosphate additives in processed food, anything on the label containing the letters PHOS are absorbed at nearly 100%. So deli turkey and lentils can list similar phosphorus on paper and land completely differently in your blood. Paper phosphorus is not blood phosphorus. One shopping habit. Turn the package over and look for phosphate additives first. Mung beans are unusually gentle among legumes. Half a cup cooked runs around 270 milligrams of potassium, well below most relatives, and they cook in 45 minutes with no soaking. If your potassium has ever come back high, that's the legume I'd start you on. Lentils are higher in potassium. If your filtering is well preserved, that's a benefit. If your last potassium was above 5, it matters. And that's the contradiction that confuses careful people. For most Americans, potassium is protective. It lowers blood pressure and counters sodium, and the American Heart Association actively wants you eating more of it. High blood pressure is the second leading cause of kidney failure in this country, behind diabetes. So with early kidney changes, more plants and more potassium is one of the best moves available. That advice flips as filtering falls. In later stage disease, the same potassium that protects one person can trigger a dangerous heart rhythm in another. Same mineral, opposite instructions. That's why one article says eat more bananas and the next says never, and both are right about a different person. So know your stage and your last potassium. Everything below is written for the early and moderate range. Further along, the food is still good, but the portion is a conversation with your kidney doctor, not with me. Now, number 2. Navy beans and their white cousins simmered into soup or mashed onto toast. Navy beans are one of the richest sources of resistant starch, a carbohydrate your small intestine can't break down. It reaches the colon intact, and the bacteria there ferment it into short-chain fatty acids, especially butyrate. Butyrate calms the gut lining, and a calmer lining leaks fewer bacterial toxins into the blood. Those toxins are what your kidneys have to chase down. Less leakage, less filtering work, less scarring. They also bring roughly 255 micrograms of folate per cooked cup, about 64% of a day's requirement. Folate keeps a blood amino acid called homocysteine in check, and high homocysteine damages the tiny capillary tufts inside your kidneys where filtering actually happens. And 10 grams of soluble fiber per cup, that second exit for nitrogen, opened wide. Now the rule I promised you, because this is the part that gets skipped and it's the part that matters most. Beans are high in potassium in the bag. They do not have to be high in potassium on your plate. Potassium is water-soluble, and it leaves. The method. Start with dry beans, not canned. Cover them in plenty of cold water and soak overnight, at least 8 hours. Then pour that water down the drain. Do not cook them in it. Rinse, cover in fresh water, simmer until tender, 60 to 90 minutes for navy beans. Then drain that water too. That double discard pulls a large share of the potassium out of the bean and takes the gas-forming sugars with it, which is the other reason people quit beans. Food science measurements put those losses in the range of a third to half, depending on the legume and the method. If you must use canned, drain and rinse under running water for a full 30 seconds, which strips a large fraction of the added sodium. And don't salt the pot while they cook. Salt toughens the skins and loads sodium you don't need. Season after. Half a cup of cooked navy beans, 3 to 4 times a week, prepared that way. That's the whole prescription. Which leaves number 1. And number 1 isn't a food. It's a trade replacing one animal protein meal a day with a plant protein meal. Not going vegetarian. One meal. Here's why it outranks everything else. Every gram of animal protein arrives with an acid load, and your kidneys neutralize it. Sulfur-containing amino acids from meat, eggs, and cheese break down into acid your body buffers partly in kidney tissue and partly by dissolving bone. Plant protein arrives with the opposite potassium salts that become bicarbonate, which is base. Same protein grams, opposite chemistry. Picture your kidney as a sponge you wring out daily. Animal protein makes you wring harder. Over 20 years, that's the difference between a sponge worn thin and one that still holds. There's a timing piece too. Most Americans eat almost no protein at breakfast, a little at lunch, then dump 40 or 50 grams into dinner. A single large protein load triggers hyperfiltration. The kidneys temporarily crank their filtering rate up to handle the surge. Do that every night for decades and you're redlining an engine once a day. Spreading the same total protein across 3 meals lowers that peak. Beans at lunch and a smaller piece of meat at dinner is the same fuel through a gentler engine. Now I know what some of you are thinking, because Delia said it almost word for word. I was told kidney patients shouldn't eat beans. Too much potassium, too much phosphorus. Whoever said that wasn't wrong. They were incomplete. That advice was built for people on dialysis or close to it, before we understood that plant phosphorus is half absorbed and that soaking and boiling strips potassium out. If you're on dialysis or your potassium runs above 5, follow your nephrologist. For the millions in the early and moderate stages, the blanket ban has cost them a food that was helping. Here's your self-monitoring tool. Get a notebook. Every time you have labs drawn, write one line. The date, your creatinine, your eGFR, your potassium, and what you ate the night before, plus any creatine or protein powder you were taking. 4 labs in, you have something no single result can give you. A direction. Kidney disease is diagnosed by trend, not by one bad day. And the person who walks into an appointment with that notebook gets a different conversation than the person who walks in with a worry. Now, the part I never skip, because I work in an emergency department and I see what happens when people guess. Mildly elevated creatinine. No symptoms. Monitor and retest. Write down anything new, ankle swelling, foam that lingers in the toilet bowl, urinating much less or much more at night. Bring that list to your primary care doctor at your next visit and ask specifically about eGFR and cystatin C. If swelling worsens over days or your urine output drops noticeably, call that office and ask to be seen this week. If you can't get in and you're vomiting or can't keep fluids down, urgent care can draw labs the same day. But chest pain, a heartbeat that feels slow and irregular, spreading muscle weakness, or barely urinating at all, that combination can mean dangerously high potassium, and it belongs in the emergency room now. If your heartbeat goes strange, you feel faint, or you're too weak to stand, call 911. Do not drive yourself. That rhythm can stop a heart in a parking lot, and the ambulance carries the drug that fixes it. Here's the whole video in one sentence. Your creatinine is the water level, your eGFR and cystatin C are the drain. And all 6 of these foods work by putting less into the tub. Red peppers instead of tomatoes, cabbage as your default side, barley instead of white rice, mung beans and lentils for gentle protein, navy beans soaked and drained twice, and 1 animal protein meal a day traded for plants. Delia still eats meat. She has a small steak on Sundays. What changed was lunch navy bean soup, from dry beans, water discarded twice, with cabbage and barley in it. Her cystatin C eGFR was 73 in February and 76 in August. Those numbers wander, and I won't tell you a soup fixed her kidneys. But she isn't afraid of her lab slip anymore. That part I'll take credit for. Here's your one step, small on purpose. Tonight, put a cup of dry navy beans in a bowl of cold water on the counter. That's it. Tomorrow, you pour the water out and cook them fresh. And for about 90 cents, you'll have made the change on this list with the most evidence behind it. And if you're due for kidney labs, ask one question. Can we check cystatin C too? That sentence is the reason Delia got 11 weeks of her life back. If someone in your family has been told their creatinine is borderline, send this to them before their next blood draw.